The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Monday, April 14th, for the first of two shows today. Two shows. All right, we're going to talk about the brewing conflict between the U.S. Supreme Court and the Trump administration over El Salvador. We'll talk about Zelinski, Trump's latest comments on Zelinski. Inspiring. Tariffs, more news on tariffs. We'll talk about AntiTrust, Harvard, CBS, big law. No good news today, sorry. None, no. Anyway, probably a short show. I'm going to go over these stories quickly. You have an opportunity to ask me questions in the Super Chat. We'll see how many I get to. But because there is a second show tonight, I'm going to have Christina Laporte, the author of two novels, two medical thrillers, Dissection and you'll find out tonight, the second novel. So it's going to be fascinating. She's a cardiologist, doctor turned internist turned cardiologist turned author of thrillers, found a publisher, got them published. So we'll talk to her. Fascinating. She's an immigrant from Italy. All of that. So it should be a lot of fun. Christina's a lot of fun. So we'll talk to Christina tonight. Next week, next Monday, we've got Encore Gate on Monday. A few notes about this week. Not many shows this week. Tomorrow, no show. Wednesday, probably no show. Maybe late. I'm hoping Thursday a show. No show Friday. Then we'll do Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. No show Monday, Tuesday. Okay. Anyway, we'll see, right? So we'll try to get as many shows in the rest of April. In the meantime, you can support the show. You can ask questions. You can do super chats. All available right here, right now. So go for it. So this week I'm in Atlanta to do some stuff and tape a capitalism course for the Ayn Rand Institute. Yeah, that's it. All right, let's jump in. All right, so here's a setup, right? ICE rounds up a bunch of gang members. Doesn't pay too much attention to who it's rounding up. If they have tattoos, if they're suspicious, if someone they follow that says a gang member, they put them in a plane, ship them to El Salvador. Before the plane reaches El Salvador to a high-security jail, one of the nastiest maybe in the world, a judge says, wait a minute, none of these people had due process. You didn't document any of this. None of this was processed. You can't ship people out of here to an El Salvadorian jail without due process. Bring the planes back. ICE ignores them, lands the planes in El Salvador. They're unloaded in El Salvador and put in the high security jail. In the meantime, it turns out that several of the people, maybe up to 10% of the people on the planes in the El Salvadorian jail right now, are not gang members. Maybe it's more than 10%. 10% is probably what we know. They're all, though, illegal immigrants, with exception of one person, Abrego-Garcia, who literally has an order from a judge saying he cannot be deported. He went through immigration court. He went through an asylum hearing. And at the end of the hearing, it says he cannot be deported. So he's got a document saying. Abrego-Garcia is married. He has 3 young kids. And he lives, I think it's in Boston, if I'm not correct. I think it's in Boston. At some point during his immigration hearing way back, he was accused of belonging to MS-13. That was never proven. That was never the basis for the accusation. And indeed, the ICE was barred from deporting him because the judge viewed it as a risk to his life if he was deported to to El Salvador because the gangs were after him, not because he was MS-13. Anyway, he was rounded up, and he is now in an El Salvadorian jail. Now, all this evidence was brought in front of a judge, and the judge basically said, you got to bring him back. He is not, he had there's a clear legal standing that prohibited you from deporting him. If we'd gone through due process, we would have discovered that, and you wouldn't have deported him. And the government is saying, no, yes, the government is saying basically, yes, we made a mistake. Yes, he was deported illegitimately. We shouldn't have deported him. But we can't do anything about it. Can't do anything about it. He's in El Salvador now. Can't do a thing about it. We're not going to do a thing about it. So this issue was appealed to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court came down with a ruling, I think it was on Friday or Thursday, 9-0. How often do you see that? 9-0. Basically telling the government, you got to bring this guy back. You got to bring this guy back. You got to facilitate his return to the United States. That's what the Supreme Court ruled. And so they told the judge in the lower court, you have to, hold the government accountable and monitor that they bring this guy back. Facilitate his return. Yeah, Edward, the Trump zombie, is going to tell us that there's a big difference between facilitate and effectuate. That's right. And that's the source of it. Anyway, they have to facilitate the return. Now, all facilitating a return would require is Trump telling the Trump administration telling the El Salvadorians, we want this guy back. And they would put him on a plane and he'd come back. So today, Bukele, the presidente of El Salvador, the guy who built these horrific jails, was in the White House. Scheduled meeting. He is a fan of Donald Trump, or maybe it's the other way around. Donald Trump is a fan of Bukele's. But at the end of the day, Bukele is a tin pot dictator of a tiny little country. Trump is the president of the United States of America. And Trump could have asked Bukele to ship Abrego back to the United States. Very simple. And let me tell you, Bukele would have done it. Or he could have told him, let's delay. And Bukele would have said, I need to think about it. I mean, in other words, Bukele would have done whatever Trump said. Well, whatever happened in the private meeting, it was clear that something else was decided. That is, when they came out in front of reporters and Bukele was asked if he would facilitate the return of Abrego-Garcia, he said, no, I will not. And Trump was sitting there with a huge grin on his face, just smirking, like, yeah, the guy's doing what I told him to do. This is so cool. What's the Supreme Court going to do now? They can't force a foreign leader. Yeah, Supreme Court has no jurisdiction in El Salvador. But the U.S. government is basically saying, we will not do anything, to bring Abrego-Garcia home. And the President of the United States is saying, I'm not going to do anything. Basically, the administration is saying the Supreme Court has no authority over foreign policy, and therefore we are going to ignore the Supreme Court. Now, here's the nightmare scenario. I'm not saying this will happen, but it could happen. As they're walking out, this is not the nightmare scenario, this is reality. This is actually what happened. As they're walking out, and he's saying goodbye to Bukele. This is the transaction was the conversation was actually recorded, and Trump says to Bukele, "I wanna put Americans in your jails. real criminals in your jails. So build more. You got to build at least 5 more huge jails. These are massive jails, hold tens of thousands. You got to bring 5 more because I want to put Americans in your jails. Now here's a scenario. Let's say Trump is serious, only hardened criminals. But let's say a hardened criminal, somebody goes to trial and is found guilty of murder and is shipped off to a Salvadorian jail, which seems unconstitutional to me. But I don't think anybody cares anymore about the Constitution. Imagine that. And imagine a year later, DNA evidence is found that shows that this guy didn't commit the murder. And now you think, bring him back from El Salvador. And the president goes, nah, I don't think so. I'm not going to ask Bukele for that favor. Why would I ask Bukele? Let him stay there. And that's it. And there's no recourse. And nobody cares. And America just goes, yeah, I know he's innocent. Yeah, we shouldn't have sent him to the El Salvadorian jail, but let him rot. We don't care. Particularly, I don't know, if he's an immigrant, maybe he has darker skin or something that makes him unappealing to the powers to be. Or even worse, imagine that they just start arresting people and sending them to, El Salvador. And, once in a while, they rope into the rounding up some critic of Trump. And he's not a gang member. He did nothing. And they go, oh, yeah, sorry, that was a mistake. We didn't mean to send that guy to El Salvador. But he's there now. There's nothing we can do about it. So be it. I mean, this is sci-fi level American dictatorship is coming stuff. This is how bad it is. It's crazy. And what's going to happen, right? So the Supreme Court could now say, you are not fulfilling, right? We ruled 9-0. The Supreme Court could escalate. So Abrego-Garcia's lawyers could go back to the Supreme Court, allege the administration has refused to comply with the court's order, and then the court finds that the administration did not comply. It rules again. It demands action. And then what? Would Congress then take it up and impeach the president? No. We know that wouldn't happen. Would the military, now led by Trump accolades, who he fired the military leadership and put his own people in there, would they back the Supreme Court and, I don't know, depose the president? It never happened in American history. Would it happen? No way. It wouldn't happen. If the court found the administration in contempt, would President Trump be arrested and put in jail for contempt of court? Would Secretary Rubio, who I don't know who's responsible, the head of ICE, would any of them be arrested? No. Not given who runs the Justice Department, not given who runs the FBI. I mean, the reality is, the scary part of this, I mean, I feel sorry for Abrego-Garcia and his family. I mean, this is tragic and horrific. But think of the wider implications here of the rule of law. Think of the wider implications of an administration completely out of control, with no respect for the courts, no respect for the rule of law. Is there, I mean, where does it go from here? And it very could be that the court decides not to hear the case. Because it could very well be that the court decides, you know what? Is this the hill we want to die on? Is this the constitutional crisis we want to have? I mean, if we're going to have a constitutional crisis, it'd be over a bigger issue? Trump's going to ignore me anyway. I mean, Roberts might think that he got the unanimous decision. He now, ignores the non-compliance and lives to fight another day. There's nothing in American constitutional system that can compel Trump or can compel a dictator in El Salvador to do something that he understands the president does not want him to do. So Trump doesn't have to say, don't do it. He just has an understanding with Bukele. That smile clearly articulate that. And Roberts could say, I can't compel Bukele to hand over this guy. And I can't, so what? There's nothing I can do. Nothing I can do. Just think of that as you defend this president. Just think of that. I mean, God, I'm looking at a video of Bukele saying, how can I smuggle a terrorist in the United States? Of course I'm not going to do it. The question is preposterous. And Trump sitting there with this smug smile, nodding. This is sick. This is behavior of a unhinged man, an authoritarian. An authoritarian. And as we'll see, I think there's a pattern. The pattern is these guys are setting us up for a Orban, ultimately Putin-like, we have elections, but they don't matter type authoritarianism. That's certainly what it looks like. I hope I'm wrong. But last time, 4 years ago, we had January 6th. Next time, they're not going to be that polite. They're going to have the support of everybody within the administration, including potentially the military. Why would they hand it over to a mob of crazy MAGA incompetence? Why not do the job right? Anyway, it's scary stuff. Legit scary stuff. Yeah, I know, you just can't buy into it. It's just hard to believe that would happen. Did you believe in 2020 that January 6, 2021 would happen? Do we believe that Trump could just say to hell with him, let him rot in prison? He's sick. I'm going to ignore the Supreme Court. Or did you believe that Donald Trump would write the following? After Zelinski was in 60 Minutes over the weekend, Donald Trump was not happy. Not happy. Donald Trump wrote, the war between Russia and Ukraine is Biden's war, not mine. He is such a child. A child. You guys voted for a 5-year-old to run this country. I just got here. And for 4 years during my term, I had no problem preventing it from happening. There were hostilities between Ukraine and Russia during that period of time, during the first Trump presidency. Putin had already invaded Crimea and eastern Ukraine. It just wasn't as hot of a war, and Trump did nothing about it. So yes, he appeased Putin even back then. President Putin and everyone else respected your president. Not my, anyway. I had nothing to do with this war, all caps, but I'm working diligently to get the death and destruction to stop. If the 2020 presidential election was not rigged, and it was, talk about a 5-year-old, he cannot let it go. He cannot let it go. It's a lie. He knows it's a lie. And every single, every day almost, it comes up in one of his statements, one of his tweets, one of his press conferences. If the 2020 presidential election was not rigged, and it was, in so many ways, that horrible war would have never happened. President Zelinski and crooked Joe Biden did an absolutely horrible job in allowing this travesty to begin. There were so many ways to prevent it from even ever starting, but that is the past. Now we have to get it to stop and fast. So sad. So Putin didn't start this war. Putin didn't invade Ukraine. Putin had no responsibility for the actions of his military. Putin has no responsibility for this war. No culpability. Nothing. Zero. Nada. This is on Zelinski and Biden. This is their war. It's their fault. Yeah, he later goes on and says, Zelinski, during his 60 Minutes interview, said he wants to purchase Patriot missiles. He wants to watch $15 billion of American Patriot missiles. I think 10 batteries. These are essential for the protection of Ukrainian skies from constant bombardment by the Russians. So, and he said he wants to buy them. Didn't ask anybody to give it to him. This is what Trump says. Zelensky is always looking to purchase missiles. You don't start a war against somebody that's 20 times your size and then hope that people give you some missiles. You don't start a war against somebody that's 20 times your size and then hope that people give you some missiles. So you might have thought, a couple of months ago when Trump accused Zelensky of starting the war that, maybe he misspoke, maybe it was an accident, or he's just trying to put pressure on him that moment. No. This is a strategy, or this is Trump. This is his agenda. Zelensky started the war. Not Putin. Zelensky. Ukraine. This time he doesn't mention Biden. And of course, he says, and then hope that people give you some missiles. Looking to purchase missiles. He wants to buy them. Buy them. Now note that Patriots are not missiles, they're defense systems. Why do they want defense systems? Because Russia is pounding their civilian population with missiles. Just had one hit the city of Sumy and kill 34 people, injuring 100 on their way to church. Civilians. Note that Zelensky didn't start the war. Trump's best buddy, Putin, did. Kudababa, it's not that he's a doofus. I don't get you calling Trump doofus. Like, doofus is like an innocent, like, oh, he's so spaced out. This guy is evil through and through. President Trump is evil through and through. This is immoral, moronic, detached from reality, and downright evil. It's evil to let the person initiating the force, to let a brutal dictator like Putin, with nothing, and then to blame the innocent who's defending himself with everything. That's not being a doofus. That is being through and through corrupt in his soul, in every fiber of everything that he is. This is a bad, bad human being. Now, of course, we're going to be told that this is just his stance to try to get Zelensky to sign a peace deal. It's out of the deal. It's 3D chess. It doesn't matter. This is disgusting. And the fact that no pressure is being put on Russia, nada, none, is truly despicable. And note that Russia was the one country that avoided tariffs on Liberation Day. Pretty interesting, huh? And then when he was asked about the missile attack by the Russians on Sumy, where, as I said, all those people were killed and injured and everything, he said, look, I was told, this is Trump again, I was told they made a mistake. This is Biden's war. This is not my war. Made a mistake. Putin makes mistakes. Zelensky starts wars. I mean, watch the 60-minute interview. Zelensky comes across as this honest, even courageous, thoughtful, trying not to offend, trying to use the right words, but doesn't want to lie kind of person. I mean, Zelinski is a good guy. He really is. Trump is just thoroughly corrupt and thoroughly immoral. And President of the United States. I laugh because it's so absurd that he is. All right, guys, don't forget, support the show. Support the show through stickers, super chats, value for value. I do these shows. You listen. The value I provide, you should reciprocate. All right. That was Zelinski. All right. Constant news about tariffs. It doesn't stop, right? Every day, every hour, there's something new, some new angle, some new thing. So, we had this exemption from electronics on Friday evening that Trump put in, primarily from China, because China has we have 145% tariffs on Chinese goods. And Apple and NVIDIA and all these were panicking. And somebody made a phone call, and Trump excluded electronics from the tariffs. Well, in the meantime, during the weekend, Lutnick, this guy should be tarred and feathered, right? Tarred and feathered. This guy should be out. This is God. He's the worst of all the Trump appointees so far. Anyway, Lutnick goes on TV and says, "Oh no, these exemptions are just temporary. Just temporary. They won't last. Trump will reverse them." Talk about creating uncertainty. Ongoing, constant, no-stop uncertainty. Then Trump comes out and says, look, the new tariffs coming. We're going to have tariffs on computer chips. We're going to have tariffs on drugs. And all of that on national security grounds. But I might spare the auto industry. Constant shifting, moving around, nothing staying still, constant changing the rules, uncertainty through the roof. I'll give you a favor, take it away later. Maybe I'll give them a favor. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe here, maybe. Yeah. So we're going to have, soon, we're going to have tariffs on computer chips, pharmaceuticals. And we'll probably have some relaxation of levies of tariffs on cars and auto parts. So why do we do it to begin with, if now we're going to relax them? All right, so beyond just being immoral doofus, corrupt to the bone, the guy's incompetent, can't make up his mind, is creating massive uncertainty in the U.S. economy. So this morning, the expectation was that stocks would be way up. And indeed, at some point early in the morning, I guess the NASDAQ was up something like 2%. But as it kind of sunk in that, no, these new tariffs are coming, it's not a done deal. It's temporary. Stocks declined. They landed still up. And indeed, everything kind of moderated. The dollar kind of basically was flat today, but interest rates were down. So after the trend of interest rates going up, interest rates were down, and I think that's a big calming effect. But this is not ending anytime soon. The circus around trade is not ending around soon, and you're probably hearing. If not, you're not following what's going on, which is fine because you said you should only listen to the Yaron Brook Show for news. A lot of small businesses are going to really, really be struggling and maybe go out of business here because they depend on imports from China. A lot of businesses just don't know what to do because they don't know what's next. They don't know how long they can plan. They can't. I talked about this. The pain felt, I'd say primarily by small to medium-sized businesses who can't lobby, they can't call up the White House, and they can't hedge their bets. They can't revamp their supply chains on a dime. They're going to struggle. There are going to be real challenges here for a lot of companies. A lot of companies. And remember, a lot of manufacturing that's done in the United States uses components or raw materials that are imported. So even manufacturing, which is supposed to grow because of the tariffs, potentially in the short run will shrink because they can't bring stuff in. So it's a complete destruction. I mean, think about the fact that, the tariffs that were excluded are electronics. Apple and NVIDIA and Microsoft, they're in better shape because the exclusion, temporary as it may be. But if you're a mom and pop shop selling toys, if your mom and pop shops or not a mid-sized business selling furniture, a lot of the furniture in the United States is made in China. How are you going to survive this? Even if it's only temporary. Even if Trump folds, what about the damage? The massive damage. I mean, a lot of these companies, their margins are very small. How do they survive the next few days, the next few weeks, the next few months? And while he might fold on a lot of things, it's not obvious he will. It's not obvious he will. I really think he hates trade. He hates trade deficits. And he is willing to inflict a lot of pain in order to try at least to fix it. I don't know that any deals are going to be cut because the deals will not cut the trade deficit. Now, maybe he'll fold because there's a lot of pressure, but I'm not convinced. Again, today he was talking about more tariffs on pharmaceuticals and computer chips. And then for some reason, reducing them on auto parts and automobiles. He hates trade. He believes trade is zero sum. That is hating trade. He hates trade. He doesn't believe trade is win-win. And then, so he is destructive. Destructive, and he's destroying people's lives. Now, again, small businesses, medium-sized businesses, so be it, you might say. The big guys will survive. The big guys will survive. Let's see. Yeah, that's clear. Now, on top of all this, in the meantime, he is handing China a massive strategic victory. I mean, you couldn't have scripted this if you were pro-China any better than it is. Trump is a huge fan of Putin's. And you couldn't script his behavior towards Zelinski any more pro-Putin. It's completely motivated by his pro-Putin stance. Now, what you get is you couldn't have scripted his behavior towards China as more, in the end, strategically more pro-China. Because what is China doing right now? China now is basically going around Asia and saying, see, you can't trust the Americans. You can't trust Trump. And who the hell wants to pay even 10% tariff? We'll offer you a deal. We'll sign a free trade deal with you. You will see that China will be signing a whole bunch of deals on trade with other Asian countries, potentially other countries around the world, even maybe the EU. Trade that lowers barriers in both directions. China has a lot of bad economic policies. China's ignorant of a lot of things when it comes to economics. But they understand that they benefit from trade, and so does everybody else. There's very few people out there in the world who have the kind of infantile, perceptual level view of trade that Trump has. I can't resist. Every day, the Trump zombie core out there, the Trump zombie PR machine, produces new excuses why tariffs are good. Every day. You see it on X, you see it, and then you see all the Trump zombies saying the same thing. It'll replace the income tax. It'll bring manufacturing back. And then Edward now, trade deficit, decrease the value of the US dollar. We want a strong dollar. But Trump wants a weak dollar because a weak dollar makes it possible to export more. So they come up with stuff. They don't even understand what they're talking about. They don't understand the concepts they're relating to. But that's what the PR machine of the tribe has dictated is today's excuse for why tariffs are good. Anyway, so we have a trade. We have continuing uncertainty. We have Xi going around Asia now, strengthening ties, trying to cut deals. I think he's in Vietnam today, trying to cut deals. Vietnam, which should be a strategic ally of the United States, and trying to control China. Vietnam, who is afraid of China, who has a border with China, has fought wars with China. Vietnam is going to move more in the direction of China because they're being tariffed by the U.S. So they better establish better relations with the other big player in the world, which is the Chinese. He is in Vietnam today. He will be in Malaysia tomorrow and in Cambodia. So he is doing a little trip out there. Also, relations between China, Japan, and South Korea. Japan and South Korea, two of America's strongest allies in Asia, have warmed recently when they were very cold up until now. Trump has managed to get the Chinese, the South Koreans, and the Japanese talking to each other in a kind of warm kind of way. So Trump is providing everybody with an incentive to shift to China because he is acting like a schoolhouse bully. Now, in the meantime, China is trying to hurt America where it counts. So, for example, there was a story, and it's hard to verify if this is actually the case, but it looks like this is the case, that China is halting all rare earth mineral exports, right? So China is not providing rare earth minerals, at least not to the United States. Now remember, you need rare earth minerals for everything: defense, medical equipment, cars, phones, industrial tools, everything. And while China only mines about 60% of the rare earth metals in the world, it refines 95% of them. It would take the United States 5 to 10 years if environmental regulations were reduced to be able to open up a refinery that refines rare earth metals. Now, as of now, American companies have an inventory. They've stockpiled the minerals that they need for a quarter or two. But if this continues, this could be more pressure on financial markets to do their thing, to penalize us all. By Greenland, you get zero rare earth capacity, refining capacity. There are plenty of rare earth materials in Montana and Wyoming, but we don't have the refining capacity to do anything with them, and the environmentalists won't let us mine them. Greenland is going to have the same environmental concerns, but even if you could mine them, where are you going to refine them? You have to send them to China to refine them. We could get more rare earth materials from Ukraine, but there's very little refining capacity anywhere in the world. Again, let me just repeat it, since it seems 95% of all the refining capability is in China. Now, you could probably increase a little bit the capabilities existing, but it takes a long time, huge capital investments, and a long time. In the meantime, American firms and American defense firms run out of it within 3 to 6 to 9 months. So it doesn't help you to get the raw earth materials if you can't refine them. Anyway, that's just one other aspect to the whole trade fiasco that those responsible for trade in the United States are not thinking through. All right, let's see. More bad news. All right, so during the first Trump administration, toward the end of the first Trump administration, 6 years ago, the Trump Federal Trade Commission, there was Trump's from the first round, started an investigation for antitrust violations of Meta, Facebook. That investigation, of course, was continued with even more vigor by the Biden administration. Well, after 6-year investigation and legal battles, today, the Federal Trade Commission will face off against Meta in court, suing Meta for antitrust violations. They are going to demand a breakup of Meta, at the very least, a spin-off of Instagram and WhatsApp. You know, it is interesting, right? This is Trump's FTC. But Andrew Ferguson, who's Trump's newly installed pick to lead the FTC, has said that they're rearing to go against Meta. So Trump is not pro-business. He's not pro-big tech. He wants to break them up. Now, so this is going to go to trial. Again, the case is bipartisan. Democrats wanted it. Republicans wanted it. Antitrust, as you know, I think is an evil law, a bad law. There should be no antitrust laws. The government should not be in a position to decide what is too big or not, what is so-called antitrust or not. So this is going to go forward. Now, there is a chance, notice how this works. There is a chance that President Trump will weigh in and argue and try to, get the FTC to drop the case. Now, why would he do that? Well, because Mark Zuckerberg has become chummy with the president. Zuckerberg met with Trump in the Oval Office earlier this month. Facebook gave money for the inauguration. And, Zuckerberg has tried to convince Trump to arrange for settlement so that it doesn't go for trial. So the one chance that we won't get a Trump being as bad as a Biden when it comes to antitrust is cronyism, is if Trump is, in a sense, bribed in one way or another to let Facebook not be broken up and just pay a fee or something like that, right? So settle with Facebook. So if that happens, you'll know why it happened. It happened because Zuckerberg kissed the ring. Remember when Trump a long time ago talked about draining the swamp? He's making the swamp bigger. The swamp animals now are maybe different, but there are plenty of them. There are lots and lots and lots of them. Lots of them. Okay. By the way, what Edward is saying about dollars and trade is just wrong. He's just getting the economics of it wrong. So trade deficits did not suppress the dollar. The dollar up until Trump was, up until a month ago, the dollar was at record levels. The dollar versus yen was trading at 160 yen to the dollar, which was a record. Well, not a record of all time, but it was very, very high. The dollar was very, very strong vis-a-vis the Europe, even though we run a trade deficit with Europe. The dollar is very strong, was very strong related to the Canadian dollar, in spite of the fact that that we run a trade deficit with Canada. The dollar was very strong, very strong with regard to the UK, in spite of the fact, do we run a trade deficit? Maybe we don't run a trade deficit with the UK, but we certainly do with, and even, so certainly with Canada, with EU, with these others, the dollar was very strong versus the Israeli shekel. So we run a trade deficit with Israel. That's changed because as the tariffs have come in, the dollar value has actually gone down significantly. Even though theoretically it should have gone up, it's gone down because nobody wants to hold dollars anymore. So the dollar it's Edward, you don't know economics. You just should shut up. I mean, it's fascinating to me how everybody has an opinion about fairly complex economic issues, right? I mean, the value of the dollar, how it works as a reserve currency, what that actually means to its value. The dollar has been a reserve currency since since World War II. It was detached from gold in 71, right? So it's been a fiat currency, complete fiat currency, and a reserve currency since 1971. And yet, the value of the dollar has fluctuated dramatically during that period. It's been very high, it's been very low. But it's still a reserve currency. It never changed the fact that it was a reserve currency. The very fact that I'm saying the dollar was high, when Trump came into office, was very highly valued, suggested before it wasn't. So it fluctuates over time for all kinds of reasons. Geopolitical reasons, economic reasons, relationship between interest rates of bonds in different countries will determine the value of their currency. Trade being one of the elements within this soup of elements that determine the value of a currency. But this is the thing that happens in the world in which we live today. You go to Twitter and you read a few tweets about the dollar and you think, whoa, I am now an expert on economics and I'm an expert on trade and I'm an expert on fiat currencies. And I'm going to go to somebody's stream or do it on Twitter and explain to people, teach people how the value of the dollar gets determined in global markets. I mean, the audacity of people to do that. And I see thousands, hundreds of thousands of people doing it every day, right? You actually have to know something. You have to actually understand and know the different elements that go into determining the value of a currency. And then, as Edward does, then you predict the economy in the future. Oh, the value of the dollar is going up. How do you know that? By what standard? Do you understand the soup that goes into determining the dollar? And you know with certainty that it's going up. I mean, how much money have you made in currency trading. That would be the question, right? If you know the dollar's going up, why aren't you going onto the currency exchanges and buying dollars or shorting other currencies? It's just mind-boggling. The stupidity of the culture we live in. Like, this is the consequence of, we don't need experts. Experts overrated. The experts got it wrong on COVID, so we don't need experts. Burn them all. Throw them into the sea. I mean, if you knew even a fraction of what you claim to know about economics and currencies and so on, how much money have you made in the markets based on this amazing knowledge that you have that nobody else has? Anyway, I mean, that's a whole issue about experts, which was part of that debate between Dave Smith and Douglas Murray on Joe Rogan. And Douglas Murray's absolutely right. Expertise does matter. It doesn't mean you don't question the experts. It doesn't mean you don't challenge them. But being an expert means something. And the fact that you have an opinion that's counter to the expert, you should most of the time keep your mouth shut until you know more. The first thing you should happen to you, and it happens to me all the time, when I have an opinion that's different than a lot of people who actually know something about a particular field, is I question myself first. And only then, after I prove it to myself, do I question the experts. Really? Mike says, audio is fine, but this show crashes every 45 minutes and has to be refreshed before I can watch further. Has that happened to you in the past as well, or just this show today, this actual show? Is anybody else getting that phenomena, which is weird? I hope it's not happening to all of you. All right, so AntiTrust is chugging ahead as if we still had Biden. No difference, no change. Biden, Trump, when it comes to attacking American business, no difference. I have no idea why it happens to you always, Mike. That is weird. Mary says yes. Neocon Gaming says no. Rand says no. Chaos says yes when he streams. Alejandro says yes. Huh. Interesting. But Jennifer says fine. Mike says every single show. But no other shows, just me. That's bizarre. I have no idea. I'll try to look into it, but it's very hard to address a problem that not everybody has, that only some people have. All right, let's keep going. As you know, the Trump administration is going after universities. It is withholding funds from universities. We're talking about primarily the Ivy League schools. We know about Columbia, Harvard now, $9 billion are being withheld. I think Cornell and Northwestern. I think Cornell is about Cornell's about $1 billion in federal funding, and Northwestern is $790 million are being withheld. Columbia basically a compromise with the government, or offered a compromise, basically capitulated to most of the government demands, including placing 2 departments on kind of academic supervision. The government, I don't think, is happy with that, and Trump administration actually wants Columbia, the whole of Columbia, to basically come under federal oversight in terms of the content of what they teach, which is super scary. Super scary. But so that is happening with Columbia. Anyway, the same was happening with Harvard. Harvard required that they eliminate all DEI, that they screen international students for supportive of terrorism and anti-Semitism. And they also wanted, Harvard, they wanted some oversight over some of the courses at Harvard. Harvard basically has said no. Harvard has said no. As they wrote, although some of the demands outlined by the government are aimed at combating anti-Semitism, the majority represent direct governmental regulation of the intellectual conditions at Harvard. So there's going to be a confrontation. Now, Harvard is the richest university in the United States, and it is going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. Basically, Harvard is saying we're a private institution. Again, to quote Harvard, no government, regardless of which party is in power, should dictate what private universities can teach, whom they can admit and hire, and which areas of study and inquiry they can pursue. That is a great statement, and that's true. And then the next question is, how do we create a system where these universities don't get any government money from the government, so they don't depend on the government in any kind of way? And that is all now coming to a head. So this is going to be really interesting to see as the Trump administration tries to regulate the content being taught at private universities. It's pretty scary again. Again, pretty scary. And of course, since we're on the issue of free speech, here we go again. More free speech issues. As Donald Trump wrote, almost every week, 60 Minutes was just being sued for billions of dollars for the fraud they committed in the 2024 presidential election with their interview of failed presidential candidate Kamala Harris mentions the name Trump in a derogatory and defamatory way. But this weekend's broadcast tops them all. They did not one, but two major stories on Trump, all caps. One having to do with Ukraine, which I say is a war that would never have happened if the 2020 election had not been rigged. In other words, if I were president. And the other story was having, God, this is a long sentence, was having to do with Greenland casting our country as led by me, falsely, inaccurately, and fraudulently. President of the United States, ladies and gentlemen, I am so honored to be suing 60 Minutes, CBS Fake News, and Paramount for their fraudulent, beyond recognition reporting. They did everything possible to illegally elect Kamala, including completely and corruptly changing major answers to interview questions. But it just didn't work for them. They are not a news show, but a dishonest political operative, simply disguised as news, and must be responsible for what they have done and are doing. They should lose their license. Hopefully the FCC, his organization, his administration, as headed by the highly respected Chairman Brandon Carr, his chairman, will impose the maximum fines and punishments, which is substantial, for their unlawful and illegal behavior. CBS is out of control at levels never seen before, and they should pay a big price for this. Make America great again. In other words, they criticized me. They said nasty things about me. They maybe even said false things about me. They should lose their license. They should be fined. And by the way, I'm suing them in court, which he won't win, but it will make it a court because CBS will probably settle because they don't want to be shut down. Now, this is Viktor Orban. This is Putin. You slowly, systematically attack the media. You slowly, systematically take away their ability to broadcast, their ability to operate. The media that survives, you hand off to your buddies and friends. And then soon enough, you wake up and the entire media is Trump's friends, is Trump friendly, and there's no criticism. And it's not that criticism is officially banned. There's no law that says you can't criticize the government, but there just isn't any criticism because everybody who has been critical has been fined or fired or, made to understand they should stop. Maybe they're in an El Salvadorian jail. This is a direct attack on the First Amendment, I hope this goes to the Supreme Court, not that it seems to matter that much. And, no matter who the president is, you do not threaten the media. Now, Obama did this once. Trump did this many times during his first term. But he is clearly ramping it up this time. Dramatically ramping it up. Much worse. Going after them. So, this is not good. This is not good. You might hate the mainstream media, but the mainstream media is important. Their existence is important for free speech, and the government starting to regulate mainstream media in terms of their speech is a unmitigated disaster and unconstitutional. Now, add to that the fact that as much as the mainstream media is biased and often lies, Trump lies a lot more than the mainstream media does. His lies on a completely different scale than anybody in the media. So, anyway, this is, again, scary stuff. I continue to say, Trump is the most dangerous president we've, I think, ever had. All right, let's see. Just adjacent to that, you remember that woman, the student at Tufts University, who wrote an op-ed criticizing Israel and was picked up by ICE, unmanned, men with masks, unmarked car, and she was detained. Well, the government has now admitted that she has no links to terror organizations and that she was not engaged. She was not engaged in any anti-Semitic activities or any activities that could be deemed supporting of terrorism. She co-wrote an op-ed criticizing Israel. Now, it was a bad op-ed, and it's a stupid idea, and it was all of that. But, okay, that's what free speech means. People can publish stuff that I don't agree with. The State Department has no evidence linking her to terrorism or anti-Semitism, yet her deportation is being pursued under the legal provision of the Immigration and Nationality Act from the Cold War era. She's a national security threat. So, anyway, that is more attack on free speech. What happens when your speech, my speech, gets viewed as endangering national security in some way? What happens then? All right, finally, we've talked about this story, but it keeps developing. It keeps getting worse. You remember Trump is suing or signing executive orders for the Justice Department to go after law firms that he deems as being PC, that he accuses of supporting the enemy, Democrats. He wants the government to go after them. He's taken away their privileges to argue in courts and in federal buildings and things like that. Well, if you remember Paul Weiss, that company, it came, the head of the company came, met with Tripe and agreed to basically provide $40 million of legal services to causes that supported the Trump agenda. And as a consequence, Trump rescinded the executive order against the firm and allowed them to fully practice. Well, now we have 9 more firms. 8 more firms. There are 9 in total. 8 more firms who have basically signed deals with Trump. Combined, they are pledging $940 million. $940 million, just short of $1 billion, to provide pro bono legal work for causes that support Donald Trump's agenda. I mean, and nobody seems to care. This is not a headline. This is not making the news. You have to find it buried somewhere. Law firms are basically paying Trump to rescind an executive order that would have constrained their ability to practice their profession. And they were singled out. They were named by name. It wasn't the whole legal profession, but just some. I mean, this is so outrageous. There's a sense in which I'm speechless. It's unbelievable. I mean, so you've replaced the military. Congress is ineffectual. They're not going to criticize you at all. And now you basically eviscerated 9 of the largest law firms in the country and created a massive disincentive for other law firms to sue your administration, to challenge it, to go after it in any kind of way. You're basically turning the entire law profession, basically telling them, if you go after me, you go after my interests, we're coming after you. Now, to their credit, there are 3 prestigious law firms that have opted to fight the threats in court, at least for now, rather than make a deal. But it's unbelievable to me. And what's unbelievable to me is that nobody views this as a major event. I mean, we're really are inching towards authoritarianism here without anybody caring. Literally without, I mean, there are no riots in the streets, there are no demonstrations. Even the newspapers, they're big on tariffs. They talk a lot about tariffs, and maybe they'll talk a lot about, the guy in El Salvador, and they'll talk about that for a few days. But this is happening to American law firms. And nobody cares. Nobody cares. I don't know. What can you do, Bonnie? This is what Americans elected. And what can you do? Here's the things you can do. You can call your congressman up and tell him to grow some balls. You can call your congressman up and tell him you want them to challenge Trump. You want them to, for example, you want them to return tariff power to Congress. You want them to consider impeaching Trump on this massive, massive power grab that he is engaged in. All you can do is call your congressman, write letters to the editor. Those are the things you can do. That's about it. What else can we do? We can't elect him. We can't vote him out of office. He's already there. Next time, you can remind everybody of how bad he is, and maybe they'll vote him out of office. But for now, he's there. And we're stuck with him. You can call your newspaper and say, why aren't you covering the story? You can write letters to the editor. Here's the thing, guys, and this is reality. You can do something. What did Michael the other day say? If I called on my followers to go out into the streets, we'd get 5,000 people out there. I doubt it. But here's what I'll call on you. Start writing letters to the editor. Start writing letters to your congressman. Start calling him up and bugging the hell out of him. Get politically active. Not in the sense of joining a political party, but you vote. You have a district. You have a congressman. Make sure he hears from you that what Trump is doing is unacceptable, despicable. Now, who said there won't be a next time? Bannon keeps saying in every interview that Trump will run in 28 and win in 28. at the rate Trump is going, what is going to stop him exactly? Who's going to stop him? Congress? No. The courts? He'll ignore them. Who's going to stop him if he decides to do it? The military? No. The FBI? Justice Department? No. So it's now to put pressure on Congress. Trump himself has not ruled out running again in 2028, even though he knows there's a constitutional amendment prohibiting him from doing it. He doesn't care. He doesn't care. All right, guys. That is the news for this Monday, April 14th. I told you there was no good news. It's just all depressing. There was one positive news story. Where was it? All right, let's do this. There's a new gene editing therapy that, basically works to suppress the liver's regulation of cholesterol. So it is just being shown in a small trial. Gene therapy is always small trials. That a shot of this will reduce cholesterol by 53%. Now, this is still phase 1 trials. It's very early. And we're talking about bad cholesterol. We're talking about so-called bad, the LDL cholesterol. We're talking about LDL cholesterol. So in this study, they managed to get a 53% reduction in cholesterol of LDL without any side effects. It's the first trials of a drug, of a gene therapy. This is something that affects your genes. It affects the genes of the PCSK9 gene in the liver. It affects that directly. So this is a major breakthrough. It could involve like an injection, an infusion, once every few months, and you could have dramatically lower cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, for the most part, holding some things constant, is a major predictor of heart disease, of problems in the heart. So getting that under control, getting that down, the best measure from what I can tell from doctors for your risk of heart disease is your ApoB, level of the ApoB. It again relates to cholesterol and to the ability to create clogs, calcification of your arteries. This drug would lower your ApoB dramatically. 50% is huge. And some people have very, very, very high cholesterol, have a very high risk of heart disease, and this could be a lifesaver. All right, guys, I remind you a few things. Alex Epstein is a sponsor of the Yaron Brook Show. His Substack is alexepstein.substack.com. His Substack is amazing. It gives you kind of the info you won't read anywhere else about both the state of American energy, electricity, the grid, power production, and drilling, and the solutions to how to dramatically improve the grid and electricity and all that stuff, right? Power generation. There is nobody better. There's nobody more knowledgeable. And he does it in a way that he provides you a talking point. So when you get stuck in that Passover dinner, those of you who go to Passover dinners, and those family members are complaining about fossil fuels and climate change, Alex will provide you with the talking points to shut them down. Just shut them down. So sign up, alexepstein.substack.com. Alex is great. And then the Ayn Rand Institute is offering the listeners of the Yaron Brook Show, an exclusive discount for OCON, the objective conferences that is happening in Boston, Massachusetts in July, I think July 1st to 5th, over the 4th of July weekend. And it is an amazing conference. I'll be there. I'll be speaking on the opening day. There's lots of events. You can play poker with me. We'll be playing poker. It'll be a blast. It'll be a lot of fun. And Anyway, you can get a 10% discount by signing up for the conference, and in the space where it gives you to put in a discount code, put 25, that's from the year, YBS, that's us, 10, that's a 10% discount. I don't think if you put in 25, YBS 25, you get a 25% discount, but you can try. 10 will work, 25, I'm not guaranteeing. All right. Whoops, what did I do? Also, we are way behind on the Super Chat. What's up, guys? Forget your wallets at home or wherever it is. So we're way behind on the Super Chat. Please consider supporting the show. Value for value. This show is funded. Listeners like you could do it on Patreon or PayPal on a monthly basis, or you can come over to YouTube and you can ask a question, or you can, and get an answer. Or you can come onto YouTube and do a sticker and participate that way, one way or the other. You can support the show, no excuses. We got 157 watching on YouTube, 200 and something on Twitter. We should be doing better than we are. And of course, finally, yes, I highly, highly value those of you who support the show on Patreon. So please go to patreon.com, Yaron Brook Show, and become a monthly contributor. That is an enormous, enormous help. I'll also remind you again that we do have a show tonight at 8 p.m. East Coast time with Christina Laporte. We'll be talking about her novels. We'll be talking about some issues, political issues that are brought up in the novels that I think are interesting. We'll be talking about her future novels. So we'll be talking to Christina about her career, her career in medicine, and how that got her into a career in literature. I think you'll be very inspired. Here's somebody who turned to literature very late in life and has been successful in writing her thrillers and getting them published. All right, Mike. Miller is now saying that Abrego-Garcia was found by a court to be an MS-13 in 2019. I assume he's bending the truth. Yes, he is. He was accused of being a member of MS-13, which he denied and continues to deny, and it was never proven he was a member, and he wasn't kicked out of the country because it was proven he was a member. So he was accused of. Miller, just like his boss, lies all the time. Oh, we've got a question here by a different Miller. This is not that Miller. This is Jeffrey. Hey, Jeffrey. It's frustrating to hear, in defense of tariffs, that consumers pay only a small percent of tariffs. What about the businesses? Well, I'm not sure why you think consumers pay only a small percentage of the tariffs. Basically, either consumers are paying it, or the importers, the people who buy it from China and then sell it to businesses or sell it to individuals, their profit margins shrink, or the American small businesses who sell it to customers, their profit margin shrinks, or it's possible that the Chinese, nobody is buying their products and they will reduce the prices and their profit margin shrinks. But all the empirical evidence suggests that the brunt of this, the biggest share of the tariffs, is borne by consumers. And now, in some cases, it won't be, because the small businesses will go out of business. So the consumers will never buy the stuff, and the businesses will just go out of business. But short of that, most businesses who buy from China and resell in the United States, or repackage and resell, or include it in something and sell, have very low profit margins, so they cannot absorb the tariff. And indeed, the companies in China cannot absorb the tariffs. Their profit margins are very low. The only people that can actually absorb the tariff are the consumers. And the ones who can't won't buy. And therefore, demand for these products will go down. And again, that puts the business in big trouble. All right. What am I hearing? That there is gorgeous weather in Michigan? I know. This is a setup, right? This is a setup. You're going to have gorgeous weather over the next 10 days. And as soon as I arrive, the clouds will come. It'll snow it snows in April. It'll snow. It'll be muddy. It'll be horrible. You guys are setting me up, not nice. It's not fair. It really isn't fair. The home country can subsidize the manufacturers so they can lower price, like the United States does with farmers. They're constantly subsidizing the farmers so they can lower price, so they can get over the tariffs that are being placed on them by foreigners. That is possible as well. But that is, again, not sustainable for very long. But that's unlikely to happen. Most of the tariffs, and the past tariffs that Trump has passed, have been shown to have basically been paid for by consumers. And remember, consumers are not you and me. Consumers, a significant portion, maybe most of imports into the United States are of parts or materials that then are used by businesses to produce some other stuff that then is sold, right? So the cost of the tariffs is often borne by the businesses that are doing the importation. And then they also raise the price of, let's say they buy motors for their washing machines from China. The washing machine is made in America, but the engine is Chinese. Then the price of the washing machine is going to go up. Now, in Trump's first term, he raised tariffs on washing machines, and the prices of washing machines went up, without any question, went up. So this is a tax paid by businesses and consumers, primarily by consumers, because businesses will try to pass on the tax to consumers. They're not going to, they don't have the profit margins to bear it themselves. Ali, Yaron, did you catch the Senate hearing of Meta's alleged collaboration with China? What's your take on Project Aldrin? Is this recently? I did not, but would I be? So I don't know. I'm gonna copy paste this, and I'm gonna look into it, and I will get back to you, Ali. I don't have a take, so it's better that I don't say anything. I try to only talk about things I know something about. All right, so I will get back to you, Ali, with an answer for that on a future show. Ali also had a question. Yaron, I want to sponsor book review, Ride the Tiger by Evola. Let me just see. How long of a book is it? Survival Manual for Aristocrats of the Soul. Ooh, it's kind of got an interesting... Oh, Evola is the right-wing guy. I'm trying to look and see how many pages it is. 256 pages. That would cost you, Ali, at least $500. So if you want me to do it, just either PayPal me or here super chat me $500 with it, and I will do it. It'll take me some time. I give you that because I'm way behind on reviews. But if for $500, I could probably do it. I'm interested in reading Evola anyway. I've read some stuff of his, or I've read a book about him, but not his stuff directly. So it wouldn't be bad for me to read something of his. I expect to hate every word, but it's part of my education. All right, Marilyn, I'm still astounded that anyone could support Trump after January 6th. I detested him years before that. Yep, and I did too. So since 2016, since he announced he was running, I don't get it. Ryan, at this point, one would have to start a GoFundMe to buy off support of key people in Congress to hold the president accountable. I guess this is now the American way. Corruption. Pay them off. Sadly, that might be the case. We might not have a choice. But it ain't happening, so don't worry about it. It ain't happening. Sandy, I'm a senior in college and seems like I will be able to go full-time into a startup I created after college. You and Rand have been some of the best voices inspiring me through the journey. Thank you. That is great, Sandy. That is fantastic news. And it's the exact kind of optimistic tone I like to counter all this negative news. At the end of the day, there's still Americans out there. There's still young people out there who are enthusiastic about the world, who want to do something in the world, and have the courage and the ambition to go out and start companies and do something new. And that's at the end of the day, economically, what really, really matters. So thank you, Sandy. Ryan, I think that economic Armageddon will be Trump's undoing. If Americans had a moral backbone, wrongfully deportation of one person would be unacceptable, and that would be enough. Will recession be enough? I don't know. I think it might be. I think there'll be a lot of pressure on Trump if there's a recession. I think they can all say, yeah, you need some pain. But when the pain is there and it's not clear that we're coming out of the pain, but it's not clear to me we'll go into recession or how bad the recession will be. Because tariffs are, again, a relatively small part of the U.S. economy. The uncertainty is there. Business activity will slow down. I don't know. I just hate to bet against American entrepreneurs, against Sandys of the world, right? But a recession could make a difference. Americans are turning against Trump in pretty astounding numbers. I mean, his favorability rating is plummeting. And what's interesting is his favorability rating among young people who he did very, very well with in the election is just collapsing. So those are all good signs. Americans are not happy with Trump. They might not know what to do about it. They might not be so outraged as to go into the street about it, but they're not happy with Trump. And a lot of the people who voted for him, are not happy with him. If the election was held today, I think Trump would lose. Make a better day. What would be a more advanced guide to economic thinking? Is the Ayn Rand University going to cover that subject? I mean, there are plans to do it at some point. I don't know when. The challenge is finding the right person to teach it. We don't, funnily and surprisingly enough, we don't have a lot of talent in the field of economics. We don't have a lot of people who are objectivists in the field of economics, which is sad. I'd say the best place to study economics is through, if you want to go to university, it's probably George Mason University. But it's reading the great Austrian economists. It's reading von Mises. It's reading Economics in One Lesson by Hazlitt and Hazlitt's work. It's reading some of the Austrians, if you can ignore the fact that they are anarchists. It's reading Thomas Sowell. Ignore the fact that he's wrong on some things, but he's pretty good. So there's and by the way, he came out against tariffs recently. He's 90-something years old. So there is a lot of books, a lot of content out there that's on good economics. I mean, Selgin has a good book out now on the Great Depression that is good on economics. Larry White and George Selgin have good books on banking and on money. So there's a lot of good content out there. Mary Eileen, is the media afraid to carry stories? By the way, we're almost done with questions, so we've got 2 more questions, and then we're done with the show. We could go longer. Is the media afraid to carry stories about the law firms that have caved? Trump is trying to intimidate all his opponents into silence. Who's going to stop him if he refuses to leave office in 2028? I really don't know who's going to stop him, and it worries me. Are they intimidated? Maybe. I really, I don't know if that is the issue, if it's an issue of intimidation. But it is clear it is clear that I think what's happening, put it this way, I think what's happening is the media is so overwhelmed with what Trump is doing. There's so much going at them that they can't cover everything. They're making choices, and they're prioritizing. And every day it's something new. Every day some new, urgent thing is happening. Mike, I'm lukewarm on human space travel, but I love that an all-female crew went into space today. I hope it will inspire more girls to go into science. I think it was like the bride and her friends from the wedding. So it's Jeff Bezos's fiancée. She went up with her friends. I think it's part of her celebration of for the wedding. What do you call it? The girls' party before bachelorette party. It's part of their bachelorette party. Was going up in space, and yeah, I think it's cool and exciting, and I have no problem. I'm not lukewarm. I'm excited about human beings in space, if only because it shows what is possible, the potential of human beings. It's a positive in this world, in this gray world. It's a shining light. Subcask, I think I'm going to give up. I'm 20, and these tariffs are just confirm I'll never own anything. I'll never be independent. I don't know what to do. Oh, you can't give up, Subcask. That's ridiculous. There's no reason to give up. You're 20. You've got a whole life ahead of you. This idea that you won't own anything, that's just not true. There are plenty of jobs out there. There's plenty of businesses to get started. There's plenty of things to do, even if we go into recession, even if Trump does all the crazy things that he wants to do. There's still life to be lived. There's still positive things to do. There's still stuff to create, to make, to build. Your life is too precious to give up. There's so much potential joy that is possible. And the idea that you can never own anything is just not true. You have to find the right kind of job. You have to work hard, be motivated, use your mind, and constantly be thinking, constantly be looking for opportunities. There's so much you can do. There's so much open space out there. In spite of the bastards, do not let them get to you. And I know my show can be depressing, but my goal is not to depress you, but to give you a warning about what is happening. But that does not diminish the value of your life and the upside potential that you still have. Nefel, thank you for the sticker. Esoteric Dichotomy, thank you for the sticker. Robert, thank you for the sticker. Alan, thank you for the sticker. You too can do a sticker and help us inch toward the goal. Oh, thank you for the sticker. Stephen just came in with the sticker. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Catherine, for the stickers. Jonathan Honing, Mary. So yeah, we've got a bunch of these. Thank you guys, Catherine Dawson. Thank you guys, and Jonathan again. So yeah, keep the stickers coming. We've got one more question, $20 question from Felapa999. If your country runs the currency used by the world because your country was once rich, you use this fake wealth to buy stuff overseas to keep it going. At some point, you collapse because you outsourced all your production. No. I mean, that's just not true. It is not true, for example, that the United States produces nothing. All it does is prints money and uses that money to buy up stuff in the world. Nobody would take our dollars if that were the case. The United States is the greatest powerhouse in the world for high tech, for design, for finance, for consulting, for marketing, for a lot of soft products that have enormous value in the marketplace. And the United States is the largest manufacturer of goods in the world. It is second place to China. The United States manufactures more than Germany, South Korea, and Japan combined. So the United States is not it's not true that it was once rich. It's rich today. It's richer than it's ever been. And it has a massive military to back that up and to protect it. We produce oil and we sell it. We have many natural resources in this country that get sold. So the idea that the United States was once rich, and now just using fake money, the money is fiat money. That does not make it fake. Money is the common medium of exchange. It is the medium of exchange in the world. The reason the world uses it as a medium of exchange is because of the United States' economic strength. 25% of world GDP, in spite of only having 4% of the population, and that has not shrunk in spite of the rise of China. And the United States is much, 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 much richer than it was at the end of World War II. Much richer. And trade surpluses are not a good thing. They're not a bad thing, but they're not a good thing. And trade deficits are not a bad thing. They're not a good thing, but they're not a bad thing. So, and everybody in the world wants dollars so they can invest in the United States. Until Donald Trump came along and destroyed our reputation, everybody wants to invest in the United States. Why? Because we have incredibly productive people. Productivity rates are super high, much higher than Europe. We have incredible technology. Everybody wants to invest here. Now, it is true that we run massive government deficits. And that is what is going to kill us. So if something's going to kill America, it's government spending. It's government consumption. I'm going to do a show on this soon. I don't know exactly when, but excellent article by John Cochran analyzing the whole trade situation and how it's related to the budget deficit. We borrow too much money because we spend too much money. Government spending, government consumption is a problem. The trade deficit is not the dollar. It's a problem because we have inflation, because the Fed prints it, and it's a fiat currency. But it's not going away, guys. It's not going to disappear. It's not about to collapse. The system is surprisingly robust. It's not a counterfeit. It's a counterfeit to what? There is no money today. The money being used is the dollar. It's not a good money. It's a lousy money. It's a really, really bad money. It's a money that is easily inflated and constantly being inflated. But it's still money. So don't get overly depressed. The world is not coming to an end. The United States is not this pathetic, weak country that does, people that do nothing. We're an incredibly productive place. The wealth that we have is real, not fake. And it's and the real opportunity is still out there. Just listen to who was it? Sandy. Listen to Sandy, who's starting a business. In spite of all this. But just drive around America. There's so much wealth here. And we're much wealthier than we were in 1954, 1948, or any other. From a material perspective, we are the wealthiest we have ever been. And that's true of poor, middle class, and rich. They're all wealthier than those equivalent groups were in the past. Much healthier, not much wealthier, not a little bit. Tessa spent hours at the Rodin Museum this week. Thank you for improving life in so many ways. The Rodin Museum in Paris? You're in Paris, Tessa? Yes, the Rodin Museum is beautiful. There's some magnificent, gorgeous sculpture. There's also some terrible sculpture there. Rodin is a very, very, very mixed bag with some very, very ugly stuff that's very depressing, particularly given his level of talent. But there's also beautiful, beautiful stuff. Some of his portraits are just amazing. Highly encourage people to go visit the Rodin Museum when you have a chance. All right, guys. And Tessa's in Paris, so she must be in a good mood. I mean, being a visitor in Paris, how cool is that? Always cool. All right, guys. Thank you to all the super chatters and the stickers. Oh, one more super chat. It seems to me that many of the people who are against Israel seem to be also against Ukraine. Have you come across this? And if so, what do you make of it? Well, I mean, there are two types. There are those who are against both Israel and Ukraine. And they typically, they hate Western civilization. They hate the West and everything it represents. They hate liberty, they hate freedom, and therefore they are much more inclined to support Putin or Hamas or the Islamists. And they were, the fact that they against Israel and Ukraine is a, what do you call it, an overwhelming statement against Western civilization. There are some people who are pro-Israel and against Ukraine. Some MAGA people, pro-Israel, against Ukraine. These are people who have not rejected Western civilization in total, but have in a sense, they associate Western civilization with Putin and mistakenly associate Israel with Putin. They think Israel is more religious than it really is and more authoritarian than it really is, and therefore they support it. So it's basically one way or the other an attack on Western civilization. It's people who resent the West. All right, thank you, Abraham Campos. Appreciate it. All right. Thank you, guys. Remember, in an hour and 45 minutes, we will have Christina Laporte on to talk about her career as a doctor and then her career as a novelist, as a writer of thrillers. That'll be fun. So join us then. And again, thank you to all the super chatters. Thank you to all the stickers. Thank you to all of you for being here. I will see you in an hour and 45 minutes.